Hey, we're live. Okay. So, this week we were talking about dismissing employees. So the first question that they're asking us to go over. Sorry, my tabs are all. What is going on here?
Are you on Firefox or are you on Chrome?
I'm on Firefox. Okay.
There you go.
So for step one, we're talking about employment at will and the exceptions. So they want one person on the team to explain at will employment and to talk about the exceptions to that rule. So any takers on that?
I can.
Go ahead, Diana.
Okay, so employment at will is the employee can quit at any time. The employer can let go of an employee at any time and for any or no reason, with or without notice. But then the exceptions are breach of implied contract. And these I just wrote down kind of examples because the wording was a little bit lengthy and wordy. So breach of implied contract is where they receive statements like, oh, you're doing a good job, or let's see, the length of past employment. So if they've been working for a long time, then it's better for an employee. The lack of past warnings, or if they're getting raises, bonuses, and promotions, things like that. The second exception is breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. So like termination to avoid paying a commission to a salesperson or someone taking a sick leave, something like that. That would be an exception. And then the third is violation of public policy. So there were lots of examples of this. I thought this one was interesting. Refusing to give false testimony against another employee, defamation, firing for filing a workers' comp claim, or being a whistleblower, serving on a jury, obeying a subpoena. So anything where you're like obeying the public laws of the land, you can't be fired for that.
I had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, so I really get confused when I read all these laws, and I get all mixed up. So the at will, that's legal in the United States, right? That's how we do it, and that's how we work in each business, that they can each use this law. Is that how it's working?
With all kinds of exceptions.
With all kinds of exceptions. Okay, and so those exceptions.
But not every state is an at-will employee.
Okay, I think that's where I got confused.
Yeah. Not every state has this as a part of their law.
Okay, when we were reading this, there was something that said we don't use this in the United States, it's in other countries. Do you remember reading something like that, or did I read?
Yeah. Well, they said that common law, that where our at will system is based out of started in the UK, in England. So we took kind of our laws and then added that to it. Where in other countries, they don't have the right to fire anyone at any time like we do.
Okay.
So they haven't.
I think that's where I got confused. Okay.
So they haven't put that into their law system as much as we do. So the at-will is unique kind of to the U.S., where if you had an international company, their employment laws wherever you are going internationally could be much different than what we have here. So you got to be kind of aware and careful of violating international or laws in the new nation where you're doing business.
Okay. Sorry, it was driving me crazy. I'm like, I can't understand this. Okay.
Yeah.
And then one thing Brother Bonnie had said on Wednesday was, sure, I can, fire you because you have red hair and I don't like red hair anymore, but they also have the right to sue. So
I do. Okay. I remember all that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go away from the discussion.
Yeah.
Good question.
Well, one thing that, I worked in 2 different states for the same company. So I worked in Florida for Disney, and then I worked in California for Disney. Where in Florida, I wasn't required to take my breaks. So it was okay if I worked through my break. Where in Florida, that is, you are by law required to take your break at that specific time, you know? And so it was a little I don't know. It
Confusing?
was confusing for me, not knowing the laws behind it as to what, like around break time, there was a family who who didn't speak English very well. They were trying to find a restroom. An employee guided them to a restroom that was closed, like in an area where construction was. They're like, oh, the closest bathroom is down here. Well, that area is under construction. That restroom is not available. So the little boy peed his pants on the way to the next nearest restroom. And so this woman who doesn't speak English well is coming up to me saying, "Is there anything we can do to help? I mean, this little boy can't go all day at Disneyland in soiled pants. What do we do?" And so since it kind of was, not necessarily the our fault as a company for guiding them to the wrong restroom, but I felt like we could have handled the situation better, and that the employees should have been aware that that restroom is closed and guided them to a different one. But so we have what's called, well, anyways, there's a policy in place where if we feel like the guest had a bad experience, that we can provide something for them to make up for it. So I filled out a little form, and they were allowed to get a new pair of pants and a new pair of underwear from the nearest Disney store in the park. So I went and was physically taken to the nearest Disney store in the park with approval from my manager. But they expected me to just kind of take them to the front of the store and not, and then leave. And so I kind of stuck around and helped them know where the underwear and the pants were, and because they didn't speak English very well, and so I think going to the store was going to be a little difficult for them to maneuver it. So, but my manager was like, "No, your break was coming. You slowed everyone down because you had to go to the break at that required time." And I was like, "Why can't you just skip me and I go, half an hour later?" And they were like, "By law, we cannot do that." And I didn't understand that at all. But that's how it works in California. You have to go at your break time. And so it caused, like, I got reprimanded for doing that, even though I had approval from management to go and take them to the other side of the park.
Yeah, but then you get mad at them and you turn it into the labor board that you had to work during your break. That's California. You sneeze, you get sued.
That's California for you. Yeah. That's one reason that even though working at Disney World, I didn't want to work through my break, but I had to because other people weren't willing to do their jobs and were, saying that's not in my union contract to go get strollers for the other train stations. So I had to do that on my break in order for guests to be happy and to have a good experience. And so it's kind of like, would I rather work in California where I have to take my break instead of finishing a job, or in California or in Florida where it's, I can work through my break, but, I'm working with people who aren't necessarily, who I feel like I'm doing more than my share of the work because people aren't doing their job. So I don't know how I don't want to do that, but let's move on. But I just wanted to give you that, the laws are different in different states, even with the same company, and I had firsthand experience with that. So let's go to the second question. So we talked about breach of contract, breach of implied covenant, violation of public policy, and discrimination statutes. So those are the, race, national origin, gender, religion, disabilities, age discrimination. All of those are different breaches. Not necessarily a breach of contract, but a breach of at-will employment where you can't discriminate. Okay, so step 2, what should the manager do? So I'm supposed to ask you guys, what about Terry and Phil? What should we do about them? What impact does Terry's work have on the company's bottom line?
He's a
It's
drag.
costing him money.
I'm sorry, one at a time.
Call the name.
1, 2, 3, everybody. He's a drag on the company.
For sure.
Overall, he's costing them money. My husband is dealing with, just yesterday, he was supposed to be in a meeting where all the different project people came together, and he's mechanical engineering, and he signed off on his portion of the building, and the electrical engineer signed off on his portion of the building, and they had like 4 or 5 different people sign off, and then they had the project lead who was supposed to come in and management and make sure that, you know, yes, this was done correctly. And the guy came in and he asked the customer to borrow his schematics for the building and the floor plan, and he just came really unprepared, and it's not the first time he's done it, and he's not doing his job the right way. So it's costing the company time and money because everybody had to stand around and make sure that, you know, it was done correctly, and because the guy didn't come prepared, and so it cost an extra hour and a half of everybody's day.
Yeah. So Natasha said she feels bad about Phil's situation, you know, having cancer and you know, because the company really did rally around him, and you know that does affect company morale, you know, and it brought them closer as a group. And then to just fire him after that would really, you know, I think take a toll on the employee morale that, you know, in that group. It just seems heartless. So
People like are totally two different. I mean, the one guy is not doing anything, and he's a, you know, like you said, he's you know, a drag on the company. The other guy, he was still trying, but he wasn't getting opportunities. They weren't giving him opportunities to promote him and all those other things. So I feel like if he had been given the opportunities, his situation would have been different.
for sure.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. Oh, I was just
Are
gonna.
you going with Terry?
Yeah, this is Diana. I just wanted to quote something from the article. I agree with Dee. It says that Phil wasn't a complete disaster like Terry, but more like a fading away, not very productive person. So I think that's a good indicator. I mean, managers do have to make decisions, and he has to decide between these two. And I mean, it's clear that he's leaning towards Terry.
Yeah. So do we fire Terry? Do we find another spot for him in another department in the company? I mean, what are you leaning towards?
Well, with Terry, it's working on the politics because he was hired. The top management told him that he needs to be hired, and so that's a rough one when you've got your bosses telling you, "Oh, he's great. We need to keep him."
Yeah, I feel like the CEO would be more inclined to say, well, let's put him in another department or find another spot for him, you know, because, I mean, he's not able to do the job that he has well. He doesn't have the experience or the know-how and knowledge to really succeed in the area that he's at.
Why don't they put him with the CEO? Because when they hired him, they never said that this guy even had any skills that went with what the company did. It just... And why did the guy just stick to scuba diver instructor? I don't understand, you know, how he was able to get this job with no skills. You know, I guess it's part of the story to get us thinking about stuff, but Terry...
And I don't understand why the previous manager just kept giving him 3s and letting him slide, you know, 3.5s or whatever and letting him slide. It just... Why?
It doesn't make any sense.
I think that's the first step, is that they need to start giving some negative feedback, some official negative feedback. Otherwise, you're what was that one, breach of implied contract, where he's getting all these positive reviews. I don't think they can just fire him with nothing, you know, but I think they need to start giving him the 2.5s and start the process. Otherwise, there's that breach of implied contract.
Yeah.
But you don't know what's going on behind the scenes with the CEO and the managers. You know, is your CEO coming to you as a manager going, you know, oh, he's such a great guy, I'm so glad he's here, and, you know, how do you, if you put down that he's got a 2 and is the the CEO going to come down on you for going after one of his friends? You're just not giving him a chance. So those threes may be becoming because he's doing covering his own butt.
Yeah. Well, I think it said that even Terry was saying that he gave himself a 3.0. You know, he knows that he's not at the same level as anyone else that's in the department, that he's below performing what they are. So I think that if we, you know, in our meeting with him are like, where do you feel you're at as far as performance with the other employees in the department? Do you feel like you are a little bit below where they're performing or a lot below where everyone else is performing? Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure he knows that, you know, he's not up to snuff, you know. So, let's look at, okay, so Terry has on the bottom line, he's, you know, he's a drag. He's pretty much costing the company money. It's not like they're well, we could do better if we had someone better fit in that role. It's like we're trying to give him projects that don't matter, and it's costing us, you know, money because we're taking on projects that don't matter just so that Terry will have something to do. You know, that's kind of how I felt about it. Is so the second question about Terry is, what obligations does the manager have to the company based on that information? So it says, according to the manager, Terry makes no contribution, so all of his salary and benefits are pure cost, and that the company is only making $300,000 a year. So, but Phil seems to be less of a financial responsibility. So what obligations do you have as a manager to the company to you know, balance the salary and costs when you're only making $300,000 as a whole company? Any
Needs to get rid of somebody?
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Is that the question?
Well,
Terry.
yeah. So
Get rid of
As a
Terry?
manager, it is your job to make the tough call.
Right.
so
Unfortunately.
the hammer's got to fall is what we're saying. You know, we can't continue to keep him on just because management wants us to. You know, and I think that if we, you know, not necessarily sat down with the CEO and said, look, this is, you know, a big cost to the company, but I'm pretty sure he already, you know, probably knows that and still wants to keep his friend on. But
Yeah,
at some point,
we don't know either if he like even if he leaves, are they going to refill that position? Like, is he in a position that they need? Like, he's doing something that they need to be done. Because if he leaves, are they going to pull somebody else in to cover whatever he did?
He didn't do anything, so they don't need to replace him.
Exactly. It doesn't sound like they'll have to.
So then then put Phil in the job.
Get rid of Terry, put in Phil.
Yeah.
but with Phil's illness and his, you know, falling kind of down the ladder as far as what he's able to do now that he's going through treatments, and it seems like his illness has taken a toll and he's not able to work at the same rate as the other people in the department. Is that going to be a problem?
He probably just needs to be put in a different position because you can't just fire him. He
And
just
by
needs
law,
yeah.
they might not be able to fire him.
Because of his sickness.
I don't even know if putting him in a different position is the best solution because, I mean, you think about the employee, I mean, they can't, if someone gets sick, you don't just reassign them to something else, you know. We had, my husband's former boss came down with cancer, and, oh, am I echoing?
A little, but it's not bad.
Sorry. My husband's former boss came down with cancer, and he ended up taking disability, and he ended up passing away. But they didn't reassign him. It's just like part of life. Like, I don't think you can just reassign someone who gets sick and needs to take disability. I think the other members of the team rally together. It's part of morale boosting, and it's a confidence booster for others. I don't believe in reassigning when someone gets sick.
I have a tendency to feel the same way. But then again, is that going to be, you know, how are the other workers in that department going to feel that they have to take on more of a workload without any more benefits?
But wasn't he not doing his job before he got sick, and they were thinking about laying him off, and then he got sick, and they were like, well, now we can't lay him off. And then he got better, and they were like, we've rallied everybody around him, so it would look even worse if we laid him off.
Yeah. So that really is quite the situation, isn't it? But I think we're kind of leaning towards still keeping him and just kind of letting him know that we've noticed a slack in his performance, and leaving it kind of at that. Is that what we're thinking?
Well, did everybody read what Natasha had here?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if we were making sure that we get her input.
Yeah.
Right.
So they need to keep giving him. Well, when you Natasha, when you said they need to keep giving him 2.5, is that for Terry or for Phil?
Yeah, Terry.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So as far as the 2.5, it says that that's usually a mandatory, like you're put on a PIP. Is that what we're doing with Terry? Are we putting him on a PIP? Or are we saying even though the procedure normally is to put you on a PIP as soon as you get a 2.5, we don't like that policy. So we're going to give you a 2.5 and let you know your performance is bad, but we're not going to try and get rid of you. Or are we working on trying to get rid of him? What do you think?
I think Terry should be let go, and I think it's kind of mean to put him. I don't agree with PIPs. Especially if they were something that the company put you on and then you could get off of it, then that would be fine. But these PIPs seem to be like it's your death walk,
Exactly.
It really doesn't mean anything other than we're prolonging you being fired or let go and letting you move on with your life.
Right.
And so I still think Terry should be let go, but I don't know if I agree with him being put on a PIP. I think that's just mean. So if there's a way to get around that, that would be great.
Yeah. See, my thing with PIPs is that there's no real timeline. It's like, it's not like saying, well, if your employment you don't improve in the next month or two, then we're going to have to let you go. It's like if they don't see, improvement tomorrow, then you're gone. And it's like, wow, that to me, how do you improve yourself in a day? Is there a way to do that when you're just now learning of it? I mean, it's not like he can gain those skills, in an hour. Did you have a question, Dee, or a comment?
Well, I'm just wondering if I understand what the PIP is for,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have the detail on if you get one, how soon after you are booted out, right?
Yeah.
But a PIP could be a good thing for you if you got one and you knew that you were going to be. It would be a way that you could start looking for something else and still be getting a paycheck. So it's not like a regular layoff where sometimes you get, you don't get a notice, or you're in a bad way where you have to hurry up and find employment because you have cost of living and all that other stuff. So in that respect, I see where a PIP could be a good thing because you're getting prepared mentally. If you know how it works, you need to do something.
But here's another thing: is that PIPs go on your record. So if a manager who's looking at hiring you calls and says, "Can you give what's this person's employment history like?" You're saying, well, they are formally being, they have a PIP. It's in their record. So other companies that are looking at him are going to see that PIP and say, well, we probably don't want to hire him. So if you're a manager and you put someone on a PIP, and a new employer calls you as a reference, are you required to tell them about that person's performance history and what's in their chart?
In California, you can't. It's very, very little information that you can give out. in that when somebody calls for a reference. So one of the questions that used to be able to ask, I don't know if you can still do, is if they left the company and they wanted to come back, would you rehire them? That used to be a question that you could ask, and that was a way around all of the other, how do they perform, and that kind of stuff. I know California law is really strict.
Yep.
HRs don't even like taking the calls for references. They basically they'll say, this is when they started, this is when they left.
Yep.
That's it.
And, or if they got a promotion here or promoted to lead here, that's what they could tell you is, when they started, when they left, and what their position was.
Yeah.
So that's about it. I learned that with Disney. So I had a friend who left the company, and they knew that they could get away with embellishing their resume because they knew what Disney could say regarding their employment if they called them as a reference. So it's California law is really tough because HR is so limited in what they can say when you're looking for a new job. So they can just say, yeah, they worked from here to here, and they were in this position, or they were, got promoted to a project lead at this date. But they can't say, we also demoted them later on. We also, and things like that. So my friend was, even though towards the end, he was really terrible for the company. Like Disney's hands were tied as to what they could say to his next employer about it.
Well, we have an interesting joke that goes around when it comes to government employee, because we do performance appraisals every year. They go through that process, and there's really only one. Well, there's like one or two ways that you can get rid of a non-performing employee. It's really hard to fire or let go of a government employee, and so a lot of times what they do is they make their record look really, really good. So somebody else will hire them and take them off their hands. That's serious because I've seen it happen, and so that's one way that you can unload an employee, because we had one woman that she was just not doing anything, and I was taking all of her work, and I just went to my supervisor and I told him, I said, there's stuff in her inboxes that have been in there for 2 weeks and people are waiting for this stuff. And so he had to go through like weeks and weeks and weeks of trying to get her, and he finally was able to find another position that he could move her into, and it actually wasn't a promotion for her. It was like it was another secretarial slot, but it was the same pay and everything, so she just went across the board, and it didn't affect her at all. And I don't know, maybe she was overwhelmed by the job that she was given, and she just needed something that was more manageable. But that is an interesting situation. You have two ways of getting rid of someone. You can either, like outside the government, you just fire them, or you promote them and get them out of your area.
Put them in a different department, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
this whole conversation.
I'm sorry.
Can I just say something? This whole conversation is kind of frustrating because everyone's lying. You can't fire. You can't. Everybody. There's no honesty in any of it, and it's frustrating to me. Because if you have a bad employee, you can't get rid of them. If you're trying to do references, you're making it not truth. I don't know. I don't like this.
Yeah. So, one question
need to try and help them, like Phil. He should have had a supervisor, or even Terry, to be guiding them and have a career path. I mean, we've talked about that before. They should have something in place where that wouldn't be a problem, like Christine, you're saying. If they had a really good boss that was interested in them and helping them, then they would get them to training. They would give them all these opportunities to kind of get them on a better path so that they could be productive.
I really like the coaching style of management. I think that in my future profession, that's how I'm going to kind of develop a relationship with my employees is first be their coach, find out what their goals are for their job, and help them reach those, and that'll help the entire company as a whole. It might be hard with my duties, as a manager, to find the time to really focus on their goals in addition to my, the department's goals or the company's goals. But I think as a manager, that's your duty to your employees, and that's how you keep good employees and keep them happy, is to help them working on their goals the whole time.
Are they a drag or are they an investment?
Yeah. So our next question is about legal responsibilities or legal obligations. So what legal obligations do we, what are we running into discrimination issues and things that, contracts and things with firing Terry that would be bad for the company?
It didn't say what nationality he was, did it?
No.
I don't think so.
But it did say that he was a lot older than the other people in the department, and that the manager was hiring a lot of younger people. So it could look like age discrimination if we were firing Terry.
I do know that there have been some incidences that I know of where a company should have fired somebody, but because they fell into one of those, whether it was a religion, their age, or it tends to be more like age or nationality, that they feel like a diversification, niche. And so a company is less likely to fire them because they don't want to be looked at like they are discriminating against that nationality or that age group. And so that person doesn't end up getting fired. So even though we have an at-will, these at-will laws, I don't really feel like it's an at-will law. I feel like we're going to say it's an at-will law, but then you have all these stipulations, and employers are kind of tiptoeing around, well, if we fire them, will we get hit with a lawsuit because it looks like we're discriminating, and so then they may not fire that person who really should get fired just because of their age or their race.
Yeah. And also, there's a second thing with Terry. He's been getting 3.5s on all his past performance reviews, right?
Right.
So going down a full point to a 2.5 and putting on a PIP would be a huge out of the blue, what is happening situation for him, and that could be implied breach of contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. He even mentions that he doesn't feel like he's doing his job, so it may not be something that feels out of the blue to him. I think they need to start communicating. I think it needs to start with communication.
Yeah, so the manager approaches him and says, here's what I'm thinking about giving you your performance review, so it's not a huge surprise to him. Because, on his own review of his performance, he gave himself a 3.0. So he doesn't think that he's getting a 2.5, I don't think. Go ahead, Dee.
Oh, it's Paula.
It's Paula.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paula.
That's okay. He's 42 years old, so he's not old. But it said I was actually a little scared about the path I was on. I felt sorry for Terry. I knew Terry kept a gun in his car because he had some other people would go target shooting on weekends, and then she had heard stories of employees going crazy. So yeah. I don't know. And then she said, I know isn't politically correct, but he was short and balding with a terrible comb over.
Doesn't that fall into discrimination?
Yeah, I think he's a hardcore religious, and people said he had trouble finding a girlfriend.
Oh, that broke my heart. That little snippet.
I know. I think at that, yeah. Mm.
He can have a comb over. Look at our next president.
I think the age factor, because she said she was all the other people that she was hiring in the department were fresh out of college, late 20s. And so 42 in that department is old.
Except for
no offense to but
except
based on what she's been hiring and the
I'm offended. Because 42 is not old. But she was also, it also pointed out that her being 27, that she felt like people didn't like her being in a management position because she was so young.
Yeah.
So.
The reverse discrimination. She was being discriminated against in a way because she was young.
Well, people were mad she got the position anyways because they thought it was going to be that other lady.
Yeah. I think it was Shirley or something.
Yeah, so they were just mad anyways.
Here's what I think she should do. I think she should create her job description list. You know, here's all of the things that are involved with this job, and how well do you perform at each of these? And if they are all subpar, then a 3.0 is going to make sense. You know, a 3.0 or even a 2.5. I don't think you can keep giving stellar reviews when he's underperforming, but if it is a discussion, like you said, then that makes it a lot more sense, and then it's written and it's very specific about those job duties, which is what he's not doing.
Yeah, and I think the department has hired a lot of star performers recently, so I don't think he's thinking about his performance in terms of the other people within the department. I think he's just thinking about his performance in terms of past performance, how he's been doing. So, but if you're comparing him to the other people in the department, or if you ask him to compare himself to the other people in the department, then maybe he'll see that he's really low on the totem pole compared to them, and he might, be more apt to give himself a 2.5 instead of a 3.0 if he's comparing himself to the other people as opposed to comparing himself to himself.
That's a good idea.
His past manager needs to take some responsibility for that as well, because giving him a 3.5 was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so the past manager wasn't even conveying how well he was doing. Even if they'd given 3.0, it would have let him know it's slipping.
Yeah.
Thing too, just in case that apparently he couldn't figure it out himself. But
Is this supposed to be on a scale of like to 5 or
4? Is it 4?
It's a 4.
This is
I think 4, but like they don't really give 4s, or from what I was understanding is like 4 you have to be like walking on gold and being the best at your job every day and never even slowing down for a second to get a 4.
Right.
Is what I was.
He was getting high reviews then.
Yeah, he was getting really high. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's look at Phil. What legal obligations, as far as at any exceptions, would Phil fall under? Because he was sick, would it be disability discrimination?
It could be, and also for the length of time that he's worked with the company. He's been with the company for a long time, so that is implied contract.
Because he merged from the other company, right?
Sorry.
That's a lot of howling.
I guess the dogs like Phil.
It will go on for minutes.
How many foster dogs do you have, Paula? 2? Okay.
Is any of them named Phil?
Yeah.
We're real close to a fire station, so when they go by, they just...
Yeah. So what ethical obligations do we have in firing Terry? As far as like danger to the company, danger to employees, danger to himself. What dangers do we face if we fire Terry?
Well, you could potentially have a lawsuit, and depending on his mental stability, you could end up with, the gum coming out of the car or something. But I think that's kind of an extreme. I think if, again, you go back to the communication and you sit down and you talk to him, and whether that's a we're giving you a 2.5, we're going to put you on a PIP, we're not going to put you on a PIP, and just let him know what's happening, or we're going to give you a 3.0 so you don't go on a PIP, but this is what I need to see from you in the next 6 months, or you will get that 2.5 and go on a PIP. Whatever they decide to do as a company or she decides to do as a manager, it just starts with communication. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is it ethical if Terry's been getting 3.5s this whole time to give him a 2.5 out of the blue and put him on a PIP?
He definitely will be confused.
If his performance level is dropped enough during this last quarter, or however I can't remember how they do their evaluations, but if it is dropped in the last quarter or two, then it would be something that would need to be addressed. I like Diana's idea of putting together a list of all the requirements for the job and saying, where do you fall? Why don't you rate yourself and see how you're doing on all these different points, and then let's come up with a plan.
Yeah.
And that could involve moving him to a different department that is suited more for his qualifications.
I think if you do that, you have to get upper management involved.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that want him hired.
I think that would be part of the communication, because they did hire him. They'll need to be brought in, and she should go to him and say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What's your opinion? Are you okay if I try and find another position for him that is better suited for his qualifications within the company?
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Every company, at least where I've ever been, do you have a job description for every position? And you can go to HR and you can get a copy of that job description, and they use that job description. They pull that out when they're doing your performance appraisal. So the employee should know what that's on that, and also the manager should know what the responsibilities and duties that come under that position. That just seems like that would be square one.
Right, but then there are also those implied things that are part of the job that maybe are not included in the job description. I think making a comprehensive list. So start with the HR, but then make the comprehensive list. Like, this is expected of you because you're on this team, which may or may not be included in that official list too.
No, and I think an important part of that is to say, here's where your coworkers are performing. Here's what they're doing in addition to the jobs that you're doing. Here's where the slack is being picked up, and because of your underperformance. So if we're, because he could say, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, but if you're saying, are you doing this compared to this other employee who's also doing, this all the way up here, as opposed to what you're doing this here, letting him make comparisons and see where he's there's a huge difference between what he's doing and what his coworkers are doing, and I don't think that he's really seeing that.
He does.
Well, he got hired too, even though, he was put as a no hire by everybody. Upper management still hired him, and so there's got to be an understanding that he wasn't qualified for the job in the first place, and he never became qualified for the job even when he was thrown into the situation. And it's not like it's been 3 months. It's been quite a while, and he was given enough time to either learn the job and get up to the level quality working level everybody else is at, or not.
Right. Yeah. It's not like they put him in a sink or swim situation. They didn't put him in the department, and they gave him all these chances and all this training and opportunities to grow, and he just hasn't grown. I mean, so it's just kind of like, it's not necessarily they were setting him up to sink or swim. He was never swimming at all.
I think what would be really interesting is if there were some financial aspect to this. Like we've talked about how he's a drain on the company, and obviously he's a friend to the CEO and some of the higher ups, but wouldn't it be so interesting if they presented the numbers of this is how he is hurting the company, and is your friendship worth more than these dollars that you are not seeing? You know, I think that would be really interesting and may speak louder than just a manager thinks that he should get a poorer review. Numbers speak higher to those who are higher up, I think.
Right.
I agree.
For sure.
That's a good comment.
So, a question here about Phil. Now, what ethical obligations do we have concerning Phil as far as, obligations? What obligations do you have as a manager? What obligations do we have to him as a company? What obligations do we have to the other employees concerning Phil, and to myself as the manager? What obligations do we feel towards him ethically?
The company raised their obligation level when they rallied the whole company around him. So I think it would be a little bit more difficult to get rid of him now, even if he was a low performer before he got sick, because of how they did rally around him. Yeah.
Right.
And the company offers a pension, or sorry, not pension, but disability plan, right? So he can be on disability. I think they do have an obligation for that because it seems like he qualifies for it.
Yeah. One thing that I read in the reading is that you can only stay at a certain level for so long without getting a promotion before they consider firing you. So Phil thinks he's up for a promotion because he's been at this level for so long. Are we obligated ethically, since he's been at that level for so long, to give him a promotion?
If that's our policy.
But was his promotion, I don't remember, was that before he got sick or after he came back?
He's not
because once you leave, I mean, I'm going to go by California law, in that if you have so many employees, and we're kind of guessing that this is a bigger company, that they can't fire him, but they don't have to put him back in the same position when he comes back. They have to find a position for him. The same pay, he may be answering phones, but you're still paying him. If he was an engineer, you're still paying him an engineer price, salary. So
yeah, and I don't think legally. Sorry, Paula.
I was just going to say, I don't think that there's, I think it doesn't start over as a promotion, but he would be in a different position, therefore he would have to work for that promotion in that position.
And legally, the company is not legally required to promote. So if this policy is not working for the company in this particular case, make an exception. They're not legally bound to it. So, I mean, people get promoted on exception at times, like, oh, well, you have to wait for 3 years until you're bumped up to the next level, but then they outperform others and they're bumped up after 2 years or whatever. Make an exception in this case, but with open communication, so he's not discriminated against, but change your policy. I just think that's dumb. If you're not legally bound to do it, then change what works to make it work for your company.
Unless they're a union.
Yeah.
And then it has to be changed. Then it has to be changed when you renegotiate.
You're right. Or you could just strike. Let's just vote to strike. Oh wait,
Yeah.
We don't do that this week. Oh.
Okay, so I think we've covered all those bases. Let's move on to step 3. So we're doing an analysis of the company's HR practice, and we're going to do this one really quick. How well is the company doing with its HR practices generally?
I give him a 2.5. Put him on PIP.
2.8.
I think the big issue here is that the previous manager was just kind of letting everyone, giving most people passing grades regardless of their, whether or not they deserved it, to just keep, morale high. So I think with the new manager coming in, and she's being more fair and thinking of the company's bottom line, that they're doing better now, but it could create problems like things happening out of the blue like the 2.5 after getting 3.5s. So, but I mean, they're doing they're doing their employee reviews. They're doing a lot of these HR things. I just don't think that they're doing them in a way that they should have in the past.
And some managers have no business doing reviews. Obviously, the last manager was that way. Some people just can't do it. They can't disappoint people.
Yeah. So, second question, how does the company hire?
I don't know. Are we supposed to be bringing in some of the things that we read in that second article from that CEO of, what company was it? Honeywell? Where they talked about, like, even though these aren't layoffs, there's still some of those things that could be applied in this situation. It's just like was mentioned before, like all that open communication. You should always be communicating with them, whether it's too much. Too much is better than not enough. That type of thing. I mean, if you're going to have a sloppy HR system, then you're gonna have problems. You need to be consistent across the board.
Right.
And if your HR people aren't being consistent, or your managers aren't being consistent, then you're going to have issues of these types of things happening, of people getting really good performances because somebody really likes you versus, it's like high school all over again. It seems like there's popular people even wherever you go, and they seem to be, or they have a good relationship with the boss, or they go golfing with the boss, or they drink with the, and so that person is the one, unfortunately.
It looks like they did have panel interviews. I mean, Phil went through 5 interviews, and they all told him, don't hire the guy, and they hired him anyways.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that the company could do a better job of listening to their hiring managers and the people that are interviewing in making those decisions, instead of just going by, well, the boss says to do it anyways. That should have never happened.
It just sounds like something you'd see on TV in a movie script.
Yeah, I'm like, does that happen in real life? If the 5 people who interviewed him said no hire, why in the world would you hire him?
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. So, but now that they have the new manager in there, she's been hiring people that are fresh out of college and are superstars. Is it fair to only hire people that are fresh out of college who are willing to work 80-hour weeks, like she said, like she is? To only hire people like you? Is that fair?
I think you have to have a good mixture. I think we've learned that through.
Yeah.
I mean, you want good performers, but I think you also need different levels of ability, or, I mean, you don't want low levels, but all the same type of person, that makes it hard. You need different aspects of opinion.
Maturity and experience, you need different levels of those.
Yeah, but I mean, she's hiring people that are fresh out of college. They don't have families yet. They're willing to work, 60, 80-hour weeks to get the job done. Where, an older person who has experience, with the family may not be willing to work this 80-hour weeks to get the job done.
I feel like this is a really complex issue. This is why people get MBAs, right? Because like some things don't make sense. Like when layoffs happen and then they go out and hire new hires. I don't get that. I don't get that. Like if you've got money in the company, wouldn't you rather have someone who's long term? But I don't know. Some people think that it's a good decision. I don't get it. It's why we hire MBAs.
Okay. So next question: how do they manage people and give them feedback?
How does this company?
Yeah.
Okay.
This company. So feedback is done. Well, did we say quarterly or semi-annually? Like every 6 months?
6 months.
But it doesn't seem like they're giving them any coaching in between, right? So they don't really have their sit down with the manager. How am I doing? Type conversations. It's all formal. This is how you've been doing the past 6 months, instead of giving them input along the way.
I don't know. Maybe Harvard neglected to leave that information out.
Maybe. I mean, it
Dumb
does say that the
Harvard.
manager is very blunt, and she tells
She
people
is.
that now.
Yep, I think she probably does say stuff, so then
Yeah.
it doesn't come as any shock. It's kind of a nice management style, nice change.
It is, yeah. But I think it probably was a shock to the people that have been with the department for a while to have this new manager come in and change things up and do things completely different. So, I don't know. So I think the new manager is doing much better than the old manager in that sense, where she's able to give them very direct, not necessarily instant feedback when they do a job, but say, here's what I'm seeing you doing, here's where you can improve, and here's where you're not up to par, and having specific examples of that, and doing that very regularly as opposed to at a, I probably would like to see that more monthly as opposed to every 3 to 6 months. But
Monthly
then
might
again,
be a little bit too much if you're for management. If it's just one person in charge, that may be too much.
maybe.
It's definitely
But
has to
definitely
be in. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, it needs to be informal if it's monthly, just in passing, quick,
Yeah.
pull you aside, hey, that was a great job, or let's work on that. It can't be sitting down. That's a waste of time, like formally.
Yeah. So not necessarily giving them any, formally, you're writing down on paper and saying, sign this saying that you've done a bad job. we're not doing that every month, but we are just kind of saying, here's the good things that I see you doing, and here's room for improvement. Show me, and next month we'll talk about whether or not that improved. That's
Definitely an informal
yeah.
would be good of some sort.
Yeah. So number 4 about the company's practices. Do employees get a clear picture from the company of how they are performing?
It sounds like this particular department is, but that has to do, I think, with how she's managing it.
Yeah.
But as a whole, yeah, Terry didn't, as Natasha said, not in Terry's case because of prior management, but that's not her fault. She seems to be really open and honest with what's going on, and as long as that continues, I think that's a great thing. Very refreshing.
Yeah,
I,
she
I
was blunt.
I think I disagree because it seems like they have, here's our expectation for employees, you're underperforming and yet you get a great review. So like what Natasha was saying in Terry's case, no way, it's not consistent. And it makes you wonder, are there other employees under other managers who are going through the same thing because they've got that political pull from the CEO? It just makes you wonder if it's happening once, it's probably happening somewhere else.
I don't think the rest of the company is doing performance reviews correctly. I think he is starting to try to, but no, as a whole, like as a company as a whole, I don't think that their performance reviews are being done correctly with the ranking.
Okay, so the last question about analysis of the company's HR practices, do you think that this manager can make good decisions about these 2 individuals, or does she seem to be influenced by biases that are hard to overcome?
No, I think she can make a good choice.
Yeah.
She's pretty strong-willed, and she'll do it no matter what.
I just think that, she was talking about, well, Terry has trouble finding a girlfriend and he has a really bad comb over and all these other things, and I'm like, that doesn't have any say as to whether or not you should fire him. I mean, but also I think she seems to be more afraid that he's unstable and might respond to it differently than another manager would. But I don't think that she's going to keep him on board because she's unstable and afraid of what he'll do if she fires him.
I think from her comments, it makes it clear that she's a person and she has her, it's kind of like stream of consciousness, the comb over comment or whatever. Like she says it out loud.
Yeah.
But she sees the employees for who they are and what they've contributed. I think that's a mark of a good manager. And Natasha just made a comment. I think she can make the decision. She just has pressure from her superiors. So, if she can somehow bridge the gap, which is part of a manager's job to play that political game, bridge it between the managers, like with financial numbers or something like that, then, then she can work it.
I agree. I think the pressure from the superiors is a harder thing than, he has a gun. That was a dumb comment, in my opinion, and everything, and not even valid. But, superior pressure is a little bit more difficult, but she's pretty strong, so.
Yeah. So have you guys had a chance to look over what they ended up doing with Terry and Phil?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And I felt like that went really well. So let's talk about what they did end up doing with Terry and Phil. So Phil, they took him aside, and she before, like she had already put in her numbers to the higher managers, and they were supposed to tell Terry, but she decided to take him aside ahead of time and tell him why she gave him the 2.5, and and compared him to the other employees in the department and says, "Are you as much of a star performer as all these other new hires that have come in? Where do you rank in the department?" And he was really able to see, yeah, I am super underperforming compared to them. And so because he was able to draw his own conclusions from that, where before he was giving himself a 3.0, after coming out of that meeting, he was pretty sure that I was pretty sure that he would thought about it and was reconsidering that to give himself a 2.5 when he thought about comparing himself to the other employees. So so what they did with Terry was they said, look through the other departments, see where you've got, see where there's openings and apply for them. Well, so they gave him a few months to do that and to look for another job. So they were asking him to do that. And then, so he's looking through other departments, and then the other departments were willing to take him, unfortunately. So he was looking through for other companies, and was able to find something that way, I believe. Now, the big question that I have for you guys is, when those other companies that are considering him call you, what are you going to tell them?
Well, according to Paula, we can't tell them anything. That's lame.
In California, yeah.
In California.
So it really is based on where the company is at. So let's say we're not in California. What are you going to tell them as far as, let's see, okay, so Terry, a company asked you for a recommendation for Terry. They want to know why he left the company and whether he was forced to leave. So my job as a discussion leader is to write a letter with my recommendation. So what can I say ethically?
Are we being honest?
He showed up to work on time all the time.
Right.
He participated in meetings.
He got along with upper management.
Yeah, stick to the positive things.
Right. He's good. He's just not right in this position.
Does it talk about his analytical skills, or is that only in Part B? Do we know about that before? Like if he's actually good at the numbers and crunching? Because we know in Part B that we're talking about Terry, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That he's really good at math and equations and stuff. If we know that about him, then we could talk about that.
Definitely.
Yeah, so stick to his strong suits, what he's good at. Okay.
And he's the one who chose to leave the company. He wasn't forced to leave the company.
Yeah.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
He's really good with gun.
So we gave him a 2.5, but we didn't put him on a PIP. So we changed that procedure.
So you could say that, he's really, these are his strong suits, and he chose to leave the company because the department changed and developed in a direction that didn't suit him anymore, and he, decided to pursue something that he would be able to benefit a company, be more beneficial to a company with his skill set.
I
That
like
way
that.
it's,
The team dynamic changed. The team dynamic changed, and I like that. That's a great comment.
Yeah.
and it shows that he took the initiative to realize that he was no longer suited for the position he was hired for, and so he decided to make a change about it.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately what happened. It was brought to his attention by management, but ultimately it was his decision to take that leave instead of get fired and pushed out or placed on a PIP.
That's a good word, initiative. How did you ever think that would apply to him?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. It's funny because you can't really be flat out blunt and honest like, well, he was underperforming or whatever, because he's going to talk to other people, and people, what is that? People who have a negative experience are 7 times more likely to talk about it than someone who has a positive experience. And you're protecting your company just as much as you are. I mean, you're protecting yourself from lawsuit, from him leaving, but also you're protecting your company and the morale, knowing how they treat employees with respect. And yeah, we're going to try to emphasize your positives in a, if we're trying to give you a reference, then I think that's
you want
good.
Terry to get a new job. You don't want to ruin it.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
don't want him to be unemployed forever. You're not a spiteful manager. So, I mean, you really, you have to just kind of, pick the best and leave out the worst, I guess,
Well, and now he knows. Now he knows, and he was able to see that himself. So he's not going to go get the gun out of the car, because he's taking those steps to, because he knew that it wasn't working out or that he wasn't doing what he needed to do. Sometimes they need help to recognize, self-recognize.
Yeah.
Well, this all comes down to treating people with respect and treating them as human beings and how we would want to be treated. So, I mean, we've kind of learned that throughout this whole process. Just go and fire. We have to.
So let's talk about what happened with Phil. So does anyone remember?
He died.
Yeah. Yeah, he got another bout of cancer, and this time it was brain cancer. And he passed away.
But they put him in a position that nobody else wanted to be in, so it worked out for them.
Yeah. Yep, so he did get a promotion, though, right? So they put him in a position no one else wanted. He took it, so he technically did get the promotion that he was seeking to stay with the company. But eventually, he got cancer again and passed away.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Real?
I know we're talking about hypothetical people, but real stories about hypothetical people.
You don't like it to happen to anybody, whether they're hypothetical or real.
Yeah. So let's talk about what did the manager do that was not effective? So, well, the first manager not effective was giving everyone 3.5s regardless of the job that they were doing, giving Terry 3.5s all the time. What did the new manager do that wasn't effective? I think that being blunt with everybody and treating every employee how you would want to be treated doesn't necessarily work all the time. I mean, there are people that are going to take that better than others.
I agree, but she also needed to come in and fix some things.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to come in and swing the pendulum a little bit and everything, and she might be able to create a better balance once she's got what she needs going on there. But where you had the other manager giving 3.5s, which are obviously not earned, even Terry knew he wasn't deserving of a 3.5. He gave himself a 3.0. And so it was totally unrealistic. She was trying to come in and set the standard for what she wanted for her management crew. And I think that she has the right to do that. And I always think honesty is the best policy, even if we don't want to hear it.
Yep. Okay, so let's wrap it up. What can we learn from this case about making decisions about termination?
Take it by case, and you have to look at all the points. You can't just say, you're performing bad, you go.
Yeah.
You have to look at the whole picture. Again, it's like saying you're going to do the same thing for each of your children, discipline-wise. One discipline thing might work for one, but not for another. It's the same in working environment.
And that it's an ongoing process too. It's not just an isolated incident, but especially to protect your company, you have that paper trail of all. These are all of the interventions that we took, and these are the discussions, and to protect the company and to communicate with the employee.
Yeah. See, when I was reading it, I didn't see. See, my thing was like I didn't take into account how they had rallied around Phil. I was like, well, everyone else in his company, in his department's probably having to pick his slack up and things of that sort, and they probably want him to go. But then I was like, when I was reading everything else, I was just like, it really, they really love Phil, and they've all rallied around him, and it really would be terrible for him. So when I was thinking about the decisions about termination, I didn't take into account, his coworkers and their thoughts on it. I just thought about it in terms of, well, his coworkers would have less workload if he's gone. And I don't think that the coworkers were really thinking about that. I think they were thinking about Phil's well-being and happiness. Mm-hmm. So to me, that changed my outlook on how everyone thought about Phil when I was reading about them rallying around him. So lastly, for closing, it says, just asking you to think about what you've learned that you could apply in a future situation when you're a manager. And I just kind of shared that, thinking more about coworker, how his cohorts see him, as opposed to just thinking of him as a producer, but taking those other factors into account.
I think like a lot of people said here is that, just like the honesty and like Christine said, making sure that you're treating people with respect and not passing judgment. I don't know, being Christ-like maybe would cover all those bases, because I think if we do differently from what the knee-jerk reaction is, then we are going to be able to probably come up with better solutions and a better way to handle these situations. I think that those are the things that are going to make you a loved manager, a loved leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, any other comments? I think this was a good discussion. We're a little bit over time, so if you so just let me know if you've got anything else to add. Did we?
I have a question for Paula.
Uh-oh.
Okay, don't you think it's kind of an interesting that California is so laid back, but they're so strict on keeping the laws and the rules? They're like an oxymoron or something. Californians.
It's an interesting place.
California is so segregated because you got Southern California where it's really, laid back and things like that. But then you have Northern California where you've got San Francisco and a lot of these places that are so liberal and they create so many regulations. And especially since Sacramento's up in that Northern California parts, it really is two separate states, to me at least. When I lived there, I was in Orange County, so it was, and Orange County
Republicans against Democrats.
Yeah. So Orange County is the most Republican county in the state, I think, or at least that's what it was in 2008 when I was there. But so I was there during the whole Propgate and when Obama was elected, and it was there was serious conflicts of opinion in Orange County, but Orange County was the only one that overwhelmingly is Republican in the state, and everywhere else just seems liberal.
We've had our governor actually said he ruled against some stuff happening down here because we were Republican and that we don't support him. That's in public record.
Wow.
So
Welcome to politics.
Yeah, I'm over my head in politics, so I play the game all the time.
Yeah, I kind of think due to that whole political, I don't know, I would kind of like to see the South secede. Southern California becomes its own state.
We've had so many different things where, dividing it up into 6 different states, and
Yeah.
nobody will do that because we've got all the money down here. Northern California only smokes pot. Us down here, we do the work so that they can just sit up there and smoke pot.
Natasha has to go to work.
All right. Well, I think we're all done, but thank you for giving us the California. Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to go work in California as a manager now.
But come lay out at the beach with me.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, Paula. I'll stay over here in DC. We've got our own politics over here, I'm sure, but being new, I haven't figured those out yet.
Diana, do you have anything for doohickeys that you want to talk about?
Do we want to unlive?
Unlive. Okay, stop broadcasting.